Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sound Archives. My name is Christian Maiorino, and I am the host of this channel. So I'm a couple days late here getting the next video recorded and loaded up, but just been busy with a few things over the past couple of days. But here I am now. So anyway, as I mentioned in my my previous video, today's episode is going to be the first in a multi-part series of a what I call my Verses series. So if you've been following the channel, last year when I posted my first videos on here, I did a multi-part series comparing Ozzy Osbourne to Ronnie James Dio. Of course, you had a rivalry there, mostly because of Dio coming in to replace Ozzy as the lead singer in Black Sabbath. But of course, I didn't really compare the Sabbath albums, the Ozzy Sabbath versus Dio Sabbath. It was more starting from the beginning, 1975, up through almost to the present day, or into the 2000s anyway, comparing all the albums that they sang on, whether it was Rainbow, Sabbath, Solo Ozzy, Solo Dio, what have you. So today's episode, the series I'm going to be running now, if you could take a look behind me, we're going to do Metallica versus Megadeth. Another rivalry within metal. Of course, this one really started, Dave Mustaine, of course, being the original lead guitar player in Metallica. And of course, when they went to record their first album, he gets fired from the band, and then he starts Megadeth. And there's, at least over the years, there was a lot of bad press, between them, fighting with each other about nonsense. But anyway, there's no denying, especially in the 80s, that they both bands released some groundbreaking albums and some of the most classic, definitive metal albums. Not just inventing what we call thrash metal, but just heavy metal just in general. So anyway, with that, in this episode today, I'm focusing on the 1983 to 1986 period, where both bands are starting out. And so of course, as I was saying before, Dave Mustaine was of course responsible for or at least some of the songs on this album right here, Kill 'Em All, the first Metallica album that came out in 1983. So Mustaine co-wrote 4 of the songs on here. It was Jump in the Fire, Four Horsemen, which used to be, or originally was called The Mechanics, Phantom Lord, and Metal Militia. The rest of the tracks are all written or co-written with James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich, except for the 5th track, Anesthesia Pulling Teeth, which is Cliff Burton doing the bass solo. So this is probably the first album that came out that defined what we now call thrash metal. I mean, there were other bands, in the early 80s that were, putting out metal that was maybe a little bit more extreme, a little bit heavier than what was typical. But I would say, generally speaking, this is regarded as his first real thrash album. Metallica, of course, everyone talks about the big four, of course, Metallica and Megadeth, and then Slayer and Anthrax. Of course, in that conversation, you got to throw in Exodus, I think, Testament, Overkill, and a bunch of others, but not to get off subject. This album, it was recorded in 1983, came out on Megaforce Records. Metallica was discovered, I guess you could say, by Johnny Zazula, or Johnny Z, who sadly he passed away, so rest in peace to Johnny Z. But on this album, he opens with Hit the Lights, awesome thrashing song. Of course, Hetfield, probably the only song or the only album where he starts, does some shrieking with his vocals. And then you got, of course, the Four Horsemen, which was originally the Mechanics. They changed the lyrics, added that middle part. Motor Breath, I love that song. The drums in the beginning, and then just the chugging riff. I love that song. Jump in the Fire, and of course the bass solo, another good one. Pulling Teeth, Whiplash. A song about just being a metalhead, seeing the band at the show, awesome. Phantom Lord, No Remorse, Seek and Destroy, and of course, closing the album is Metal Militia, which is a fantastic, thrashy, heavy song. I mean, the production on here, it's a little bit rough, but I mean the quality of the songs, the playing, the blazing solos, just the definitive classic album right here. I would say, on a 1 to 5, this is easily a 5 out of 5, I think. All the albums I'm going to be talking about today, I could say, are 5 out of 5s. But there are some that I like, maybe a smidge better than others. Anyway, I'm going to go on to some of the other albums right now. But one thing I'm going to say right now, I do want to do a comparison and kind of versus through, or pit one album against each other. But what I'm not going to do, I don't want to pit this one against Killing Is My Business. And the reason that I don't want to do that is, as I was saying before, Dave Mustaine was really, I think this is just as much his debut, if you will, as it is with the other guys in this band. I mean, he was, as the story goes, Johnny Z invited them out to the East Coast to record this album. Dave Mustaine went with them, but before they went into the studio to record the album, they fired him from the band just for acting like an asshole, pretty much. And Kirk Hammett, of course, came in at the 11th hour. He was in Exodus, of course, which, I mean, they're awesome as well. So I really see this as kind of Dave Mustaine's debut as well. But that's just my opinion. So I'm not gonna pit this against Killing Is My Business. But anyway, moving on. Of course, Metallica, they toured for that album with Raven, and eventually 1984, the following year, they released this album right here, Ride the Lightning. This is probably my personal favorite Metallica album. It wasn't the first; it was the second CD that I bought. I was just like struck with the album cover. I loved the title, and I just thought it was cool with the electric chair and the lightning bolts and all that. But anyway, on this one they begin to change their sound a bit. Whereas Kill 'Em All is just straight ahead thrash, fast tempos, blazing solos. This one, you still get elements of that. I mean, the opening track, Fight Fire with Fire, of course, has that acoustic intro and then just gets really fast, really heavy. Trapped Under Ice is another, thrashy, heavy song. But then you get songs like, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is just, slower, plodding, but still really heavy and great. You get Fade to Black, the power ballad, of course, Creeping Death, and you also get the instrumental track called Cthulhu, which is 8 minutes long. And the title track is another great one. Escape, that song is a little bit more melodic, a little more, I don't want to say poppy, but anyway, I think with this one, of course, Dave Mustaine still gets a couple of writing credits on the title track and on the Call of Cthulhu, the instrumental on this one. But I think the shift in sound, as I was saying, it wasn't just being fast tempos, thrashy and heavy. You start just getting some other elements in there. You get some slower songs, which how would I describe it? I don't want to say like slower ballad. I mean, of course, you get the power ballad with Fade to Black, but I think the big influence on this one, of course, Cliff Burton starts contributing more in the songwriting realm, and even Kirk Hammett does as well here. But I think Cliff, and maybe Kirk too, they brought a certain musicality. I mean, Cliff Burton, he was a student of music theory and that, so he was bringing that element into Metallica here. And I think this album too really kind of set the template for their next few albums, and even I would say even just the Metallica sound in general. Their template was really kind of set on this album. Of course, there's a lot of people who might say Kill 'Em All is their favorite, or this album, or Master of Puppets, or even And Justice for All, or maybe even the Black Album. I don't know. For me personally, this is my favorite Metallica album. It's just hands down classic. So in 1984, when Metallica was putting that out, of course, they had fired Mustaine. He went back to L.A. or San Francisco, West Coast, wherever he was. He hooks up with David Ellison, and he starts forming Megadeth. And at one point, Kerry King was kind of filling in on lead guitar during that formative period in 1984. Of course, he was replaced by Chris Poland, who was a jazz fusion player. They finally settled on for drums, Gar Samuelson, who was also known for playing jazz fusion. So, bringing those type of musicians into Megadeth brought a different musicality, I think. And then eventually, 85, they put out this album right here, "Killing Is My Business," and business is good. Again, supposedly this album cover right here, this is the original one right here. I know that the remastered or reissued versions have a different cover, which was supposedly the one that Dave Mustaine really wanted, because this one, it was just like this Halloween decoration thing. But I don't know. I think it's a cool cover, personally. It's the first appearance of Megadeth's mascot, Vic Rattlehead. But anyway, going on to this one, you got, I love the opening, Last Rites, Love to Death. I love that kind of gothic piano type opening. It just sounds, evil, and then it just goes into the, once the riff comes in, it's killer. And then just Mustaine's vocals, wow! It's just awesome. It's so full of piss and vinegar right here. And then the next track, "Killing Is My Business," and business is good. I fucking love that riff. It's just so heavy. It just it's complex and just heavy at the same time. It's just like a surgical precision strike, just hitting right at you. "Skull Beneath the Skin," another killer song. I remember buying this album for the first time as a teenager, and just the lyrics, like right there where it's talking about the formation of this guy right here, solid steel visor riveted across his eyes, iron staples close his jaw so no one hears his cries. I just thought that was cool, like the first, when I was 12 or 13 years old, hearing that for the first time, and I kind of still do now. Then you got "These Boots," which is cover of a Nancy Sinatra song. It's okay. But then, of course, you get "Rattlehead," which is like Whiplash Part 2. Fucking killer song. "Rattle Your Goddamn Head." "Chosen Ones," I love the bass solo in the middle of that. But great song, of course, "Looking Down the Cross," just another evil type song. And, of course, closing the album is "Mechanics," which is the original version of the Four Horsemen. On this album, they don't have that slowed down middle section. Still got the original lyrics, and it's definitely a lot faster on this one too. So anyway, similar to in the way that Metallica kind of took a different direction with "Ride the Lightning" as opposed to "Kill 'Em All," Dave Mustaine here too is kind of with this debut from Megadeth, is taking a different direction from what you heard on "Kill 'Em All." On here, I would say the songs are definitely, going for, faster tempos, more complex musicianship, more complex guitar work. But it's a very different sounding album, I think, than "Ride the Lightning." I mean, it's clear, they're both still within that same genre, but, there's, you could hear two notes of this one and hear two notes of this one, and right away you know what you're listening to immediately. And I think with this one too, of course, Metallica was already on the rise. Mustaine really wanted to prove himself, and he fucking knocked it out of the park, I gotta say. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna decide or state which of these two that I like better. I mean, they're both awesome. I love them both, but I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Ride the Lightning. Um, like I was just saying a few moments ago, it's my favorite album by Metallica. Um, I don't know. What else can I say? It was really... This album right here was probably the album that really really set me in the direction of, just being a headbanger, being a metalhead, I gotta say. I mean, I bought the Black Album first because that's what was new. At the time, that's what was, known, that's what was popular. But with that, I started going backwards, and I picked this one up, and then I remember listening to this after listening to the Black Album, I'm like, holy shit. Yeah, so that's that. So, next up, moving on into 1986 now, both Metallica and Megadeth released two more groundbreaking albums. Two albums that a lot of people would probably consider their maybe the best out of both catalogs. So first, with Metallica, we got Master of Puppets. Of course, you got the iconic album cover there with the gravestones and the two hands with the strings. But, I mean, right away, like I was saying before, with Ride the Lightning and how Metallica kind of set the template with that album, they kind of follow the same template with this album. Production sounds a little bit tighter, I think, but, for instance, Battery, the opening track, has, an acoustic opening before it gets in this really fast and heavy song. The second track, the second track is the title track, again, like Ride the Lightning. But of course, Master of Puppets, classic killer song. It goes through different movements, and I mean, just one of the most iconic, one of the best riffs ever, written in metal, I think. The Thing That Should Not Be, which is a slower, more plodding song, like For Whom the Bell Tolls on the previous album. Then you get the power ballad, Welcome Home, Sanitarium. So the first half really kind of mirrors the first half of Ride the Lightning. But I mean, not that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's fucking killer album. Either way, or they're both killers. So, and of course, on the second side, it doesn't quite mirror as much because you got Orion, the instrumental track, which is the second to last as opposed to the last track. And of course, you got Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah. That riff in that song is just so hypnotic, and just the way the bass runs. I don't know. Awesome. Probably one of my favorites off this one. And then, of course, the last track you got just the fast, heavy, and furious Damage Incorporated with all those swearing in it. I think it wasn't on this CD, but I know when that album came out, or when this album came out initially, there was a, this is when the whole parental advisory thing was kind of starting up, and they mentioned it on this song. There's no explicit lyrics except for Damage Incorporated, which has a lot of fucks in it, or some nonsense like that they said. But like I was saying before, I still like Ride the Lightning maybe just a smidge better than this one, but this one is still pretty damn good. And there's a lot of people who probably say this is their favorite Metallica album. So, Master of Puppets, 1986. And again, also in 1986, which of course I got the LP behind me, but I also have it on CD right here. Megadeth put out this iconic album, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? Another album that is probably a lot of people would say is the best Megadeth, or their favorite Megadeth album. So this one, you still got the same lineup as Killing Is My Business, with of course Mustaine, Dave Ellefson. Well, yeah, Dave Mustaine on lead guitar, vocals, David Ellefson on bass, Chris Poland on lead guitar, Garth Samuelson on drums. I mean, this album is fucking killer, right here. With this one, I mean, they didn't musically. It doesn't sound really any different than Killing Is My Business. As far as the style and what they're doing, it's like you take Killing Is My Business and you up the ante, and this is what you get. Wake Up Dead, awesome. A lot of blazing guitar work. I love the kind of breakdown at the end of bum 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 bum. Wake Up Dead. And the opening lyrics too. what is it? It was 4 in the morning. I had too much to drink, so I was out with the boys. I mean, you know, I've come home, not recently. There was times in the past. I've come home at 4 in the morning and I'm singing those lyrics in my head. Conjuring, awesome evil song. Peace Sells. You got that iconic bass line in the beginning. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, that one, that was on the MTV News thing for many, many years. I remember when I bought this album and I heard that, I didn't know when I heard that MTV News thing where that, you know, came from. I just thought it was something that they did. But then I remember buying this album and listening to that song for the first time and hearing that, I'm like, that sounds familiar. And then it struck me like, holy shit, that's freaking MTV News. Iconic song. Killer. The classic video too, where the kid's watching, the dad wants to watch the news and the kid's like, I am watching the news, and he turns back to the Megadeth video. Awesome. Devil's Island, another great song. One's about, of course, about the infamous prison in French Guiana. Good Morning Black Friday, another just pure evil song. I just, you know, Bloodbath's my way of getting clean. I always loved that, you know, as a teenager, I loved it. I still love it today. Bad Omen, another good song. Last Track, My Last Words, killer. And again, they did like they did on the previous album. They did a cover. This one they did I Ain't Superstitious, which it's okay. It's not great, but honestly, the rest of the songs of this album more than make up for that. So, again, you know, like I said, all these albums 5 out of 5. But here we are, 1986. We have Metallica, Master of Puppets versus Peace Sells, but who's buying? So which one do I like better? This one is really tough. It's tougher than the last two. My opinion could probably change I could do this video tomorrow, and I could say something different, but I think the slight edge is going to go to Megadeth on this one with Peace Sells. Mostly because it's with this one, they did what they did with the previous album, but they did it better here. It was just all around better. My opinion, Metallica with this one right here, they pretty much did more or less the same thing too. But it, just a very half a millimeter lower, I guess, is what I would say. But that's my opinion anyway. I'm sure everyone else has their opinions on these as well. So anyway, that concludes those albums for today. Of course, I would be remiss without mentioning, of course, this would be the last album that Cliff Burton would play with Metallica, because we all know, tragically, he got killed when they were on tour for this. There was a bus accident in Sweden, and sadly, Cliff Burton lost his life. Very tragic. He was only 24 years old, and I know there's always been speculation as far as if that hadn't happened, what direction may Metallica have gone in. Personally, I think they still would have went the same direction that they were already going in. I think they were, they were already heading in that stratosphere anyway. Certainly by the time this album came out, at least up through the Black Album, I would say. After that, who knows? Anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave your comments below. Let me know of these albums that I talked about today. Which ones are your favorites? Which ones do you like better? What have you? Subscribe to the channel. Next week, I will be doing part 2 of this series, which will be covering the kind of the late 80s. So I'd say 88 up through 92, which will be the where these bands were really kind of, as far as popularity and record sales, were really taken off. So be sure to stick around or to come back next week for those. So until next time, this is the Sound Archives, sounding off.